Okay, hello. We are back. Our exercise that we're going to look at right now is a frame by frame animation technique. So I'm not going to go through the whole exercise. I'm just going to get you all going on it. Um, because you'll see after completing the first 5 frames or so, it's pretty self explanatory moving forward. So but I wanted to take a moment and talk about frame by frame animation for a little bit and then um, take you through the first steps of creating this. So, this is what we're going to be creating. Let's take a look at it in its final. So, we've got a stick man walking along. There's some ground here, and the stick man's going to be jumping up and down. Awesome. So, what is a frame by frame animation? It is, it's old school. It is the old way of creating animation where an artist would sit with some paper and some onion skin paper as well and create an animation literally frame by frame. And depending on how many frames per second the the filming was happening, it could take forever. So think about it. Most movies these days are 24 frames per second. So in 1 second, you'd have to draw 24 frames worth of content. That's just for 1 second. So a minute, what's 24 times 60? I'm not doing the math right now. That is a lot. That's many frames. So that would take a lot of time, and they draw it frame by frame. And the onion skin paper would help them see what the previous frame looked like, so they could trace it and maybe make some small adjustments so it would look like there's some motion, some movement. So in this final example here, we've got our first frame, then we move to our second frame, and look how our stick figure is changing. So not all of the stick figure is changing, just its left arm and left leg. Then I move to frame 3, and it is moving. We're on the move now. And as I move to frame 4, even more is changing to simulate walking. So we're going to build this by hand from scratch. So if you haven't already, open up the instructions, and you'll need this PDF because it is a visual guide for how you need to draw the stick figure. Okay, so I'm going to get us going, and then I'm going to stop the video, and you will continue on and finish it. Now, I've had students in the past go above and beyond with this exercise and create their own ending to the video. So right now, we've got our guy jumping up and down, and then it loops back to the beginning. I've had students have our character fall through a crack in the ground and disappear, or fly away, or an object flies in and hurts our character here. So if you feel like having fun with it and experimenting, be my guest. All right, so let's create a new HTML5 canvas. Let's choose 640 by 480. And we're actually going to change the frame rate to 12 frames per second because 24 is too fast. So if you're opening up a new canvas and you haven't made any of those adjustments, we can go to Modify Document and change the width and height to 640 by 480, and our frame rate is located there too. Or in your Properties panel, you'll see it over here. document settings, 640 by 480. The stage is white, and then 12 frames per second. That's what FPS stands for. All right, and let's save it. Let's put it in a folder. We're going to call it Stickman, or you can call it frame by frame. And we'll throw it in there. Okay, so I'm going to get us going. The first thing we need to do is turn on a grid. So let's go View, Grid, and choose Edit Grid. And we'll choose Show Grid. We'll choose Snap to Grid. And let's make it 20 by 20. And hit OK. That is necessary for us to build this accurately. Okay, so let's turn on our rectangle tool. We're going to draw the ground. Within the properties panel, I'm going to change the fill to kind of a brown or green, whatever you like. It doesn't really matter. Maybe I'm going to go with green. I want some grass. And no stroke color needed, and I'm just going to draw some ground here that spans almost the whole width. So it's going to start, the ground is going to exist on the bottoms, the second to last row here, the bottom. I also know my animation is only going to last 16 frames, at least if I'm just following the instructions. So let's extend the ground to the 16th frame. So highlight frame 16 and hit F5. That just inserts a normal frame. We can rename this layer ground, and you can lock it. Now create a new layer, and we'll call it Stickman. And let's turn on the line tool. So this is a tool we haven't used yet. We want to turn on the line tool and change the stroke color to black. And let's change the stroke weight or the stroke size to 3. That way it's a bit thicker. And we want to use the line tool and the oval tool to draw our first stick figure here. Now I am using my instructions as my guide. Okay, so you want to look at the PDF and you want to, it's easiest if you start from the feet and move your way up. And as you go, you want to count, okay, well the foot is 1 grid space, and the leg up to the knee is 3, and then I'm angling over, I'm going up 2 and over by 1, and then I'm going to draw another leg, same deal. You want to follow the amount of grid spaces that you need to build the Stickman using the PDF. Okay, so let's do that. Let's start with the feet. I'm going to start 4 grid spaces over. So on the 4th grid space, I'm going to draw the foot. And you should have snapping on, snap to grid. It makes this very easy. The leg goes up like this and over. And the body is 4 grid spaces high. And we've got an arm that comes down like this. Again, I'm just referencing the PDF right now. And I'm going to draw a head, turn off the fill color. There's our head. So that will be all in frame 1. Okay. Once you get your, this is where things get not necessarily tricky, but I want to make sure it's clear, because the PDF does give you these instructions, but it's better if I explain it to you and show you. Okay, so next, because we're building a frame-by-frame animation, we're going to redraw our stickman every single frame. So for that to happen, we need to insert a blank keyframe in frame 2 so we can start fresh in frame 2. So right-click in frame 2 of the stickman layer and choose Insert Blank Keyframe, and our character disappears. But let's just make sure we realize in the stickman layer, in that first keyframe, our stickman is there, but then in the second frame, he disappears, or she, and because we're going to be drawing the stickman again in this frame, and it's going to be slightly different. Now, let's look at a very important visual aid. We're going to turn on onion skinning. Onion skinning comes from that old technique of using onion skin paper to create these animations. So you can draw on a piece of paper while seeing through it to the previous frame that you just drew, and you can line things up properly. So let's turn onion skinning on, and that is this button right here. So I'm looking at the top row of my timeline panel, and it's this button right here, onion skinning. When I turn it on, this line appears above my layers within the frame timeline. You see this yellow line that you can click and drag. This is the amount of frames that your onion skinning is going to cover. We only need to cover 2 frames, the previous frame and our current frame. So I'll click and drag that yellow line to the left until it borders on the right of the second frame. So we've got a blue line that represents the beginning of our onion skinning, and then a yellow line is our end. Okay? So now when I zoom out, when my playhead is in my second frame, I see the previous frame. And I can draw frame 2 while still seeing my previous frame. Okay, so make sure your playhead is in frame 2 and turn on your line tool. And again, I'm following the PDF here. I'm going to look. Okay, my left foot now is starting in the 5th grid space over, and I'm going to start drawing my stickman from there. And some things line up to the previous frame, and some things don't. So if you turn onion skinning off, you can see the difference. Okay, so if you want to change the preferences for your onion skinning, because for me this is a little too dark, this kind of bluish color. I want it lighter. So you can click and hold your onion skinning button and choose Advanced Settings. And you can change the opacity. And I'm actually going to bring it down to 50% myself. So it's up to you how you want it to look. 50% to me looks a bit better. Okay, so let's go on to the third frame. So I'm going to highlight frame 3 and choose Insert Blank Keyframe. And notice how your onion skinning moves over automatically, and you should still be only seeing the previous single frame. Okay, so let's draw what's in frame 3. And again, you got it. I'm just using my PDF as a reference. So I'm going to use my line tool. Okay, and we're just going to continue with these steps. So fourth frame, I'll insert a blank keyframe and then draw what's in frame 4. So just follow along with the instructions. You'll see on page 3 of the PDF that each frame is sketched out here. And when you get to the end, you can change it to 8 frames per second if you really want to slow it down. And if you want your character to jump up and down, you can repeat that sequence. So there are some instructions here at the end on how to do that by selecting all the frames from frames 11 to 16, then Alt dragging those frames after the last frame, and that will duplicate that sequence, and you can have him jump up and down more. You'll need to extend the length of the ground layer to match the length of that animation, but all you need to do for that is to hit select the final frame of the animation on the ground layer and then hit F5 to extend it. Okay, so if you have any questions, let me know. And good luck and have some fun creating this animation.